body has limitations, the mind does not. We focus so much on what goes on from the neck down that we forget it all starts from here. If you're not mentally ready, you're never really physically prepared. Your preparation has to be second to none. The ones that can excel, they're so well prepared at their task, no matter what variable is thrown at them, what circumstance, they can adjust and they can get that end result. Most people, when the game ends, they exhale. The champions never exhale. It transcends whatever you're doing. It's not a switch you turn on and off. There's no such thing as beast mode. They're just beasts. There is no mode.
What is up, YouTube? Live via satellite here, and today we are talking Kingdom, Manga Chapter 588. All I can say is, wow, what a chapter of Kingdom this week, man. And like, for people who have just caught up, you probably don't understand why this is so amazing, but let me just break this down to you real quick. We have been asking this same question: what is Ousen up to? For damn near 2 years. Like, almost 2 years, we've been asking this same question over and over and over again. And then to see it finally revealed, but not just revealed, actually be something that the community had been talking about since pretty much the beginning, was really cool to me. It just brought a big smile on my face. And even looking back now, you can see things from a whole different perspective. Like, all this time when we thought Ousen was doing nothing, it was because he didn't have to do anything. The seeds had already been planted. He legit formulated this plan while sitting outside of Gyo with his map spread out and everyone fighting around him. At that point, all the work was done. Which is even scarier when you think how long it took for Shohiken to come up with the original plan and how quickly Ousen was able to formulate this backup plan. He really is truly a monster. Like, literally right now, he doesn't have to do anything at all. He could legit go and take a nap, but with his plans already in motion, he knows that the job will still get done. But unfortunately, we can't all be Ousen, and not everybody can get away with that. Alright, so the chapter starts out with us at the Shin unit campgrounds, and we're actually getting to see from Bihei's group's point of view exactly what the Shin unit troops are surviving on. And what we're getting to see here is the effects of them stretching out their last ration handout. Apparently at this point, the rations have been stretched so thin that they can hardly taste anything. It's almost like they're just eating hot water. But what makes things worse is that even though they've been trying to scavenge some of the dead horses from the battlefield and use them for extra rations, the Zhao used some weird smelly powder on their horses as they fell back, so that anyone who wound up eating that meat got poisoned to the point where they were either put out of commission through stomach aches or some where it was so severe that they actually died. So in order to keep the men safe, what they wound up passing out was just a small portion of horse meat, which all came from their own dead horses. But then one soldier says what's probably on everybody else's minds as he questions whether this small portion is going to be enough to give them any energy at all to be able to fight the next day, and even suggests that perhaps they should throw even more of their stash into their meal. But another of the soldiers disagrees because he believes that if they did that, they'd have nothing left for tomorrow, and even says that even though it doesn't look like much, they also threw in some of the portions from the dead soldiers in their group. And after hearing those words, you can tell a little more thankfulness went into the way the guys looked at their meal, and even Bihei begins eating complaint-free. Until, that is, Ko decided to bring up the point that since Ohan got defeated in battle today, that tomorrow may be their last day anyway. Which of course Bihei begins slapping him around, asking him why he's always saying such depressing things. But in order to get Bihei to back off, Ko smartly tells him that he shouldn't be wasting so much energy. But all of a sudden, we see members of the Akko army arrive in front of Bihei and his group. But Bihei and the others don't really know what to make of these guys. They realize that they're not Hishin unit, but they also realize that they don't look like enemies either. And of course a cock in there with his crazy demeanor and crazy laugh probably doesn't help to ease the mind of these guys either. I mean, how would you react if somebody came up to you laughing like that?
Laughing exercise for the heart and mind. What you can do, just laugh. Very easy. Don't feel shy.
But the soldiers soon make themselves known as Danza lets them know that he is the stand-in commander of the Akko army. And what he wants to know is if this is the Hishin unit's campgrounds. Hearing this, Bihei and his men realize that the man standing before them is the highest ranked officer in the entire right wing. And after he yells at Bihei to answer him,
"No, don't do it!"
Bihei tells him what he wants to know, that yes, this is the campgrounds and Shin's tent is just up ahead.
Idiot!
But this is where things get funny because Danza immediately goes in on Bihei, calling him an imbecile and saying what kind of fool would so easily reveal his commanding officer's whereabouts. But after chewing Bihei out a little bit, still tells him thanks as him and his men continue on their way. But I have to say, this was actually pretty interesting because Danza actually did have a point there. I mean, Bihei and them had no idea who these guys were. I mean, they could have been a little more thorough. It's like, come on, my dude, you could at least ask for the secret handshake. But not even a few minutes after, En arrives, asking if those were the officers of the Akko army just now. And after being told yes, we find out that En was actually sent there to meet him. And after being asked what those guys are actually doing here, En informs the men that it's not just the Akko army officers, but also the officers of the Gyokuho who are gathering at their headquarters. Which prompts Bihei and his men to wonder what's making all these big shots come over here. And En tells them that they're reorganizing the right wing, and that they're setting up the Hishin unit headquarters as the main headquarters for it, so that from tomorrow onwards, the right wing can fight with the Hishin unit as its core. And with everyone in a state of shock, we then find ourselves at the Hishin unit headquarters. And there we see that all the officers have arrived, and Banyo thanking Danza for actually showing up. And Danza says that even though he was reluctant, he felt he owed Banyo for his passionate plea. And then we get a little flashback to earlier in the night when Shin had visited Ohan's camp, saying that he was there to discuss how they were going to defeat the Zao tomorrow. And here we actually get the continuation of this conversation as we see that Banyo says that they need to include the Akko army in this conversation as well. And that he'll try to convince their officers to come and join us in this meeting. And the location for this meeting would be Shin's tent. So back in the present with everyone now gathered, we see Akaken begin to take center stage, stating that Banyo's a smarter man than he gave him credit for, and that Danza's being a little bit carried away with this reluctant stuff, because after all, this isn't a bad idea. And he wants to hear from Shin of the Hishin unit himself, that from this moment on, this will be the right wing's main headquarters. In other words, the commander of our entire right wing is none other than you. And the next words out of Shin's mouth were actually very surprising to me, because instead of accepting this role right away, he immediately asked Ten if that's okay with her. And even though confused at first, we see that En and Shosui both figure out why. Because if Shin were to become the right wing's commander, then that means that Ten in turn will also become the right wing's strategist. And on her shoulders will rest the heavy responsibility that comes with it. And it just shows you the level of maturity that Shin has reached, because he knows that taking on this responsibility is not just about him. And even though he knows he's ready, he wants to be absolutely sure that Ten is also up to the challenge. And to be perfectly honest, when Ten actually does give her a reply, what other choice do we have? I really didn't like that choice of words. I would have rather had her say something more confident, but even though the words weren't confident, the look in her eyes actually was. And as many people have pointed out to me, there was not a bead of sweat on her. So that's definitely a plus. And with that out the way, Shin says good, then let's get this meeting started so we can destroy the Zao tomorrow. And I really enjoyed Shin's presence here. I really thought he took control of this room and really gave off that general vibe. But then we find ourselves shifting over to the Ousen Army's HQ. And we see that Ousen is receiving reports about Ohan, but not just that, also reports about the treatment that he's getting from Kyokai. So to me, the fact that we see that Ousen is getting some reports about Ohan does show that he cares what's happening to his son. And I really don't think that we could expect for Ousen to make a personal appearance to check on Ohan, because one, he's in the middle of a war and he has a lot of responsibility and a lot of other soldiers to look after. And two, let's face it, Ousen hasn't been the best parent. I guess it's because he kind of knows what happens when parenting becomes a priority.
Exhaustion, sleep deprivation, headaches. Is your hair thinning? Do you ever wonder to yourself, what happened? Then you might be suffering from parenting. Parenting affects 10 out of 10 mothers and fathers around the world and can lead to extreme debt and loss of self-identity. You may need a fucking break. A fucking break lets you step away from it all. Results of a fucking break may vary.
But we also see that Ousen also finds out that something's going on the right wing. They've begun starting something of their own accord. And what it appears to be is something involving moving their main headquarters over to the Shin unit. And also that the messenger believes that they intend to appoint Shin of the Shin unit as commander without their approval. And to be honest, after hearing Ousen get all of this information, I almost expected him to say that this was a part of his plan, everything's within his calculations, he expected this to happen, he was going to promote him anyway. I mean, waiting to see what Ousen was going to say here was almost like a press conference. Excuse me, Ousen, question over here, please. What's your opinion about all the recent developments that have occurred on the right wing? Oh! Alright, press conference over. Ousen has already said too much. We can't allow the enemy to get a handle on what he's thinking. And I guess I'm just going to have to take that as a positive statement from Ousen, because at least he didn't have anything negative to say about Shin becoming commander, and perhaps this is what he actually wanted. But we'll discuss more about this later. But we also find out from the narrator that this wasn't the only significant event to happen on this 13th night, because there were some other stirrings taking place not too far away. And with that, we find ourselves in Gyo. And here we see two refugees from the city of Seki having a hushed conversation about a man named Takuda. And to make a long story short, after being attacked by the Ousen army, Takuda was so wounded that his face was actually wrapped in bandages and he had to literally be carried from the city of Seki all the way to Gyo. But the weird thing is, on a previous night, an old man by the name of Shoyu was walking by the section where they keep all the injured, and he just happened to see Takuda with his bandages removed. And what he discovered was the man they thought to be Takuda was someone altogether different, which means that ever since they left the city, this guy was an imposter. And the crazy thing here is, even though the guy listening to the story suggests that maybe they should just go ask the fake Takuda who he actually is, he's soon made aware that ever since Shoyu saw his face, the guy posing as Takuda has disappeared. And even though the man listening to the story thought that to be an anticlimactic ending, he's told that that's not all, because this was not a one-off case. It seems like many of the other refugees from other cities have had similar cases, with people with wounded faces turning out to be strangers. And we find out that they have no idea how many of them there are. But right now in Gyo, there's a bunch of strangers among them who are completely different people than the ones they thought them to be. And that was the chapter in a nutshell, guys. Alright guys, so obviously that was an amazing chapter of Kingdom. Seeing what Ousen's plan was this chapter was really cool to see. But what makes it even more impactful is that even though this was something that was highly speculated, it still managed to surprise us. Because for one, I think most people thought it would be Kanki that would play a hand in sneaking into Gyo. But it actually looks like these were more Ousen's men, and we discussed this a lot at the end of the 575 review. But when Kanki said those lackeys of Ousen sure are taking their sweet time, can they get any slower? That to me pretty much confirms that these are Ousen's men who are inside the city. And it also confirms to me that Kanki is actually in on the plan or either discovered what Ousen was up to. And really, the thing that amazed me most about Ousen's plan, the thing that was most surprising, was the amount of detail that actually went into it. Ousen's way to get these guys into the city was just masterful, because he knew once at the gates of Gyo that the security would be checking to see if these were actual citizens. And if you recall, they were actually checking ledgers, and those whose names weren't on ledgers were not allowed inside the city. So what was Ousen's way around this dilemma? Instead of trying to trick the guards at the gate, where Ousen's men could easily be discovered by citizens of the city they were trying to claim they were from, he instead tricked the citizens by hiding his men amongst their wounded, bandaging the faces so that you couldn't even tell who they really were. And by having them travel with them, by the time they got to Giyo, those citizens were actually ready to vouch for the people who were amongst their wounded, allowing them to walk right in, actually allowing them to be carried in. They were probably carried in on stretchers and all. I mean, this was just brilliant on so many levels. But the real question is, now with them in the city, what are those plans? To be honest, I actually think it would be pretty funny if they did like a reverse Heki and burned Giyo's food. But another thing they could possibly do is lower the gates to let Kanki's men in. And this kind of would be a better play, because even though I like the idea of them burning the food, right now at this very moment, the Shin army is like pretty much running dry. So I think they would actually need that food, and maybe that's the food that Ousen's been banking on. And the only shame about this chapter is that we actually had to get such a major development in the same chapter where Shin actually finally gets control of the entire right wing. Because by the time you get to the end of this chapter, it almost feels like an afterthought. But even though, again, this was something that we were kind of expecting, it too still had its surprises. And what really kind of caught me off guard about it was that Ousen didn't send a direct order like he did with Moten for Shin to become a general. The way the right wing actually did it was pretty much acting on their own, and without Ousen's blessing, it doesn't feel as clean. It kind of feels almost like a mutiny of some sort. And you kind of got that vibe from Ousen's men. But it doesn't appear that Ousen was really angry about it, but you know, it's really hard to tell with Ousen. But if I had to take a guess, I would actually think that this was something that Ousen actually wanted to happen. And due to what he said before in a previous chapter about him seeing the Gyokuho as a gamble to awaken, but knowing that the Hishin unit would, I kind of feel like Ousen knew that an awakened Hishin unit would be enough to get the job done on the right wing. Because Ousen isn't dumb, and I think he realizes that within the Hishin unit, apart from Shin himself, there are also two other people who are capable of really big things. Kyokai has the ability to be a general within her own right, and Karyoten, even though she hasn't been acting like it this arc, is still a top tier strategist. And knowing Ousen, I'm sure he's completely aware of this, and I believe he's probably a little excited to see what the Hishin unit can do when they have control of the entire right wing. And I have to admit that I'm actually excited too to see Shin have his first taste of actually leading an entire army, and actually getting to see things from the view of a general. And I'm really excited to see how Ten is actually able to handle this new pressure. And I pray that she doesn't buckle under the pressure, because I really need to see Ten step up. And seeing that this is the conclusion of this arc, I'm actually expecting big things from her. And Kyokai as well, because I'm actually expecting her to move up to 5,000 man commander after this battle as well, so we definitely need some achievements under her belt. But that's pretty much everything I wanted to discuss about the chapter, so let's move on to the comment of the week. And this week's comment comes from Thomas Sumner, and what he has to say is, I don't think we will see Ousen actually fight Riboku in this arc, which makes sense because Ousen has always won his past battles in the Sanyo and Coalition arcs without committing his main army. And as depressing as that sounds, that is definitely a possibility, because as we saw this chapter, it looks like Giyo is bound to fall. And with both Ryoyu and Giyo in Shin's hands, there really won't be much the Zhao could do other than fall back to defend Kanton. Meaning again, Ousen may win another battle without ever even having to lift his glaive. But when you're a genius like he is, that's only to be expected. But anyway guys, that about does it for this week's review. Let me know what you guys thought of the chapter in the comments section below. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and feel free to share, comment, and subscribe. Peace out!